Welcome to the Freebirth podcast, a supportive space for people who are learning, exploring, and celebrating their autonomous choices in childbirth. Together, we'll unpack truths, share personal stories, and claim our ability to birth freely and intuitively. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
This week, we have Stephanie's story of free-birthing her twins. Stephanie speaks to how she would have much preferred to have been in the presence of midwives, but when she risked out from the licensed midwifery practice in Canada, she was backed into a corner. Either return to the hospital where she had been abused in her first birth, or stay home and have a normal, family-centered birth. And so she did just that.
So I was 21. I was quite young when I got pregnant with my first. He was a surprise to both of us. Yeah, it was, but it was exciting. We were really confident that this was going to be great for us. And so I had done a Bradley birth class, and around that time, it was 2009 or 2010, sorry, when I was actually going to be having him. Midwives were just a very new regulated thing in our province. I didn't even know that we could have one at this point. No one told me. No one. I had no idea. It was we have one hospital that you can birth at in our city. Just one. It's like 200,000 people and one hospital. And it's a teaching hospital, which presents its own fun. So I did my birth class. I knew I could do it. It would be great. It was just, as young as I was fairly confident that this is what would happen, and my body was meant to do it. I would breastfeed, and away we would go. So I went to the hospital. I carried him to just about 41 weeks, and it was tough. It was the middle of July, and it was hot. And yeah, it was super uncomfortable. I had been offered induction left and center, but we just kind of held strong. And so around 41 weeks, my water broke, and there was meconium, which in hindsight, not a big deal.
Right. You don't know.
Well, exactly. When it was my first, I had no real knowledge of birth aside from what my class told me in handouts. And so I panicked a little bit. So I went to the hospital quite early. My contractions had started within 15 minutes of my water breaking.
Whoa.
Yeah, my births are crazy. And so my contractions started. It was like the movies. It was just away we go. Mm-hmm. So I went to the hospital, got to the hospital. They slowed down, of course. They slowed down. I had cervical checks, whatever. It was about 3 centimeters, but they wanted me there because we were 41 weeks. I was a first-time mom. There was meconium, all of that stuff. So we get checked in. Things start clipping along pretty good, and contractions were manageable. I was doing my breathing and everything. It was going pretty well. I think I got to like 6 or 7 centimeters fairly quickly, especially for a first-time mom. It was maybe a couple hours, like, between the water breaking. And then Nurse Rhonda came in, and I've never felt more demeaned or stupid in my life than when she looked at me and she's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I was like, "Well, it's good for the baby." And she's like, "But you wouldn't have your teeth pulled without medication."
Whoa.
Right? Floored. But as a 21-year-old, I'm...
Yeah, and she's a caretaker role. I mean, it's bullshit. It's so manipulative.
it's awful, right? And that line has worked on hundreds of mothers.
Oh, yeah. No, hundreds of thousands of mothers.
Honestly. And at one point, I heard her walking away saying, babies having babies. And I just
Ew.
Right? Like, I just felt so awful.
Which,
and
by the way, you're in the most primo age, right? To have normal birth.
My uterus is like ready to go. Yeah. So it was textbook hospital birth, right? Like cervical exams from 15 different people. It was just awful. So I took the epidural while I was getting the epidural. Of course, right? Because I'm feeling like I'm doing this wrong. They're telling me I'm wrong. And I had family there who was scared. It was a first time birth, and my family that was around me they're scared of birth, and that's just the way it was. So I took the epidural. They gave me Demerol without my consent.
Damn.
Right? Like, just check off everything.
How did you know they gave you Demerol without your consent?
I started feeling loopy.
Oh, wow.
I was like, why do I feel dizzy? Like, I don't feel good. And they're like, oh, we just gave you something to calm you down.
Oh, my God.
This hospital is just unbelievable.
I mean, this is not unique at all. Unfortunately, I've seen women, who I saw a woman once who her baby, they wanted to whisk her baby away to the NICU, but we couldn't really figure out why, and no one was talking to her. And the mom asked and said, don't take my baby. Like, what's going on? And the doctor nodded to the anesthesiologist, and before we know it, something went in her veins, and she went unconscious.
No.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so,
that's awful.
We can collectively be so angry for all of these stories. It is so fucked up.
Oh, they're ridiculous. It's just.
Okay, so they drug you without letting you know. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, we've gone back 50 years, drugging me. And so I get the epidural. Oh, I don't feel a thing. Great. We have a nap. A couple hours later, I'm checked again. Oh, you're 10 centimeters. We might as well start pushing. Well, they upped my epidural, so I couldn't feel literally anything. Like, all of us are turned and watching the screen. Oh, contraction. Okay, start pushing. And so I'm purple pushing. It's not working because I'm flat on my back, legs up in the air. And so it's taking too long. It's like 90 minutes into it, which, I mean, is pretty remarkable if you're flat on your back and have an epidural. And a first-time mom, 90 minutes isn't anything.
No, it's nothing. Yeah, it's normal.
Right? No. And so they need a vacuum. To get the vacuum, you have to cut me. So episiotomy, without my consent. I learned all this after. Episiotomy and the vacuum, and my son came out, and he had Demerol in his system, so he's not breathing, right? I mean, even if he's not breathing right away, it's fine. Give him a minute.
Right, but he was born on drugs.
But he was born on Demerol, so he was old, and he was 9 pounds 2 ounces, so he was large in their eyes. So he was whisked away. I didn't see him. Yeah, it was awful.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I've done a lot of work, and my births that you'll hear about after all led me to the healing from that birth. And
but it's not okay, right? Like,
yeah, not okay.
Of course, but like, yes, we can do work. Yes, we can heal, and yes, we can know better, do better, and all of that. But it's just so sad.
Yeah, it's awful, and it's it what they do to women sometimes.
And that's why sharing your story is so important, because by somebody or multiple women, will hear this, and this will be the final straw that they don't go, to a place of torture and abuse. And So thank you, because I know these stories aren't easy to tell, and I know it's painful to tune back into them and to sit with it. And, this is how we can help and protect our future women.
Yeah, it's important to know how birth is treated in the institution and how it's treated at home where it's normal.
So when you leave that hospital birth, how aware are you of how, how abusively you were just treated, or was it like, oh, that's birth?
Well, that's the thing. It was a slow process of a couple months after. My poor bottom was so sore.
Oh my God, I bet.
It was awful. My recovery was just horrendous. And so eventually I started looking into birth and watching more birth videos and reading more birth stories. And it was just a slow light bulb going from dim all the way to bright and being like, holy shit, I was abused. I was manipulated. I was worked by the system to be their perfect birthing mother, right? Like their ideal, yep, just lay back, let us do what we need to do and ship you out. It was a slow process to come to it. But once it did hit, then this fire started and I was just mad. And so then by the time we were pregnant with our second child 2 years later, it was like, oh, hell no. You'll never get me back there.
Yeah.
Not a chance. Yeah. So by
and how many years later is your second?
My second was 2014. So I was 3, my son was 3.5 when we were pregnant with her.
Okay. So you become pregnant with your second child and I was abused, no way in hell. But what's the climate with midwives in your area at this time?
Well, so midwives are becoming more and more of a thing. But at that point, the midwives we only have a handful. Like we have under 6 that are full time for a population our size. So they're turning away probably 60 to 70% of the women that request their care. And they have a checklist that you have to meet. They're regulated by the obstetricians.
Right, totally.
They're babysat, right? So it is what it is. So I managed to get in with our second. I met the right boxes and I got myself a midwife, which is great. The care was phenomenal. There was some things that she kind of was like, I need you to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to check your weight this one time. And then you can refuse every time after. So it was good. I had a lot of freedom that way.
But even like that, right? Like the way we have to compromise and make, like even that year, like we had a lot of freedom. It just says so much about the systems that women are birthing in, that like a leash is something that we're trained to be grateful for, when really your legal rights were not being honored if you wanted to decline every freaking single thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just so nuts, man.
Got to do that if you want to keep me.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like, okay.
But, it's such a good point of like, coming from the last experience, it seems probably like angels are singing every time you're going in, because if we start with crumbs, if we start with being abused and freaking traumatized, then anything above that is we're like going to be, grateful for it. Like I was in an abusive relationship for years, and then the boyfriend I met after him, basically the fact that he just didn't abuse me, I was like, oh my God, you're so amazing. Like my standards, were so low.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's like the perfect reference.
It's crazy, man. Okay. Sorry. So yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. So you're with the midwife. It's like fine. It's decent. Good.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Everything's good. Yeah. So we ended up actually having to have the home birth at my mom's house. We were in the process of moving to another city in our province. So we were living at my mom's house actually for about 3 weeks before I had her. Just the overlap between having one house and not wanting to lose my midwife, because we were going to be moving to a smaller city that didn't have midwives. There was no one underground there. There was nothing. It was the hospital. So we stayed back, and ended up having a home birth at my mom's house. So I actually ended up carrying my daughter to the exact same day. The same 4 weeks, 5 days, funny. Right? And it was awesome. It was great. My pregnancy was great. I was feeling fabulous. I was super confident in this birth. I knew with every fiber of my being that my body would be fine. There would be nothing wrong. Everything would be great. So we were just kind of puttering around and my water broke. Same thing, kind of early afternoon, early evening. My water broke, contractions started like immediately with like a 10-minute contraction. It was insane. It was not super fun. Yeah, so my water broke, that big contraction. I called the midwife, called the doula. It's like, okay, pretty sure it's time. Fairly certain. So I had texted our doula and was like, oh, I'm not quite sure it's time yet for you to come here. Like, I'm okay. I'm okay. You have kids at home. Just when you're ready, come over. And by that time, the apprentice midwife had been at our house for a little while and had checked me. And I was around 6 centimeters, which is subjective. It doesn't really mean much. But things were clipping along.
Yeah.
Pretty nicely. Yeah. And then it started to get real. It was about like 5 minutes after my water broke. And it went down. Like, I could feel my daughter's head just grinding in my pelvis with every time. And I could feel her wiggling and I could feel her flexion. And then all of a sudden it was just like, oh, here she comes.
Oh my gosh.
Favorite Lululemon pants on. And and she's like, if you don't take your pants off, I'm going to cut them. She came up behind me and tried to take my pants off.
Whoa.
And I turned around and swatted her.
Nice.
No.
That's weird.
And I know, right? I was like, give me a minute. A little heads up. And within 2 contractions, my daughter's head was crowning. And so I got on my knees and my husband was sitting on the bed holding my elbows up. And then my daughter was born in 1 contraction. She twisted and she flexed and I caught her and brought her up to my chest. And it was such a healing, powerful moment for me after the last birth where I didn't even see my son for 45 minutes. It was just incredible.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
So is there anything about that birth and your experience with that team that, well, I guess we're going to get there, but obviously I know that you then went on to Freebirth. So did you feel just completely euphoric and elated, or was there like a piece that didn't sit right with you, or?
No, it was great. It was every part of it. The team respected me. They were not in my space. They were they were as in my space as they had to be by their regulations. So, there was parts where they kind of got a little annoyed afterwards when I had breastfed her because they couldn't weigh her properly, which I was a little annoyed about. But coming from the birth that I had before, I was on cloud 9. Everything was fine. I was in my own bed. We were never separated, which, my standards were very low at that point. Afterwards, there were things I was not thrilled about. I was given oxytocin without knowing.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. I was crowning, and it's just standard.
Wait, she stabbed you when you were crowning?
Yeah. So talking after, was stabbed in the thigh.
Yeah.
While I'm, and yeah,
whoa, I've never seen anyone do it during the birth. I've only seen people unconsentingly stab moms after the birth.
Yeah.
Did you did you notice?
No, God, no.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, I had no idea. I had no idea until after. I was like, oh, these acne pains are like, these are something else. And she's like, oh, that's the oxytocin. Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh. And they need to stop calling it oxytocin. It's not oxytocin. It is synthetic. I know you know, but I think that's so stupid and such a misrepresentation. I'm sorry, it's not oxytocin. It is synthetic.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was probably the biggest annoyance that I had.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And then, just getting a little bit of shit, I guess, for breastfeeding my daughter before they had weighed her.
Wow.
Which was just kind of like, well, I don't care. You can be upset all you want. I'm not going to unlatch her so that you can leave her.
God, it's just, I mean, these are exactly the stories that need to get said because it's, again, just not to beat a dead horse, but just to go back to when our first births are so gnarly, then when it's better, which inarguably that's a better birth experience, yes, but oh my goodness, so much disruption and, I don't want to put words on your story, but I would absolutely call someone administering, drugs that absolutely affect your ability to have, an undisturbed hormonal matrix with your baby, without your consent. That is abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sad when that is the optimal birth experience.
Right.
With a professional here.
Mm-hmm.
That's as good as it can get.
Right.
Which is, it's sad. Women deserve better.
Well, and it sounds like everything about you and your husband and your baby was wonderful.
Yeah.
But someone trying to take your pants off and then stabbing you with drugs? Go fuck yourself. I'm sorry. But no, that is not okay.
Yeah. No, it's not. And when you have to experience that, to all of a sudden be like, why did I feel violated when it was this picture perfect experience, or so you're told, right? And all of a sudden you have to step back and be like, well, no, my feelings are valid. I was violated. I wasn't respected. I wasn't left alone to do what my body needed to do. And it's not that it takes having to go through it to light that spark of what the hell.
It really is just that we don't know, and it's painted as something, it's billed as something that it's not.
Oh, totally. Like in our place, it's the rate that midwives actually accept people, which is ridiculous to be accepted. It's like this coveted thing. If you're lucky enough to get a midwife, then you shut your mouth.
Right.
Because you were blessed enough to get that midwife.
Oh, it's so sad.
It is. It really is. And there's no other option. They've gone after our traditional birth attendants who are just trying to offer women an alternative.
Yeah.
The College of Midwives is on it. They're on them. And it's unfortunate.
Okay, so you have your second boo at home with the midwives and then, kind of take me to the next thing.
Yeah. So 3 years later, again, we find out we're pregnant. I had been feeling really pregnant from like the day after that we
Isn't that funny how that can happen?
Right? I'm like, there is someone in my womb. I know it.
You're like, it's not just us anymore, babe.
No, right? Get ready.
That's funny.
Yeah. So I called my midwife at that point. They just did the standard. You have to call before you even tell your husband at where we live. You have to call immediately. So I called. I got accepted into the program. And then I had a little bit of a bleed at around 9 weeks. And I had a miscarriage between our first and our second. I actually lost twins between our first and our second.
Mm.
And so I really wanted to get an ultrasound just to check. I wanted to know if this was coming to take me out again. So I got my midwife to send over a referral for an ultrasound just to see. I needed to know at that point. I needed to know if it was going to happen again, I guess. And so I went in and I was fairly sure that everything was going to be okay. I just kind of felt I felt less scared, I guess, than I had with my other loss. And so I went in and I told my husband, like, you stay at work, it's fine. I'll just go, I'll call you after, everything will be okay. I go in and the ultrasound tech looks at me and she's like really happy right away. And she's like, I'm just going to turn the screen so you can see what I'm seeing. And immediately I knew, even at 9 weeks, there was 2 perfectly round little sacs and 2 beating hearts. I was like, oh, holy fuck. And I laughed and I swore like a sailor. I was like, oh God, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Amazing, but also...
Yeah, of course, it's nuts. Yeah.
Crazy. Like, I knew it. I knew it. And so I called my best friend and I called my doula and I was like, you guys see this? This is awesome. And I immediately took my ultrasound picture and I ran to my mom's house. My mom had twins for her 3rd and 4th child as well, which is crazy. So I showed her the picture and she laughed. And she's like, well, buckle up. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we find out we're having twins. We're panicking a little bit, but we've had 2 kids. So what could really, it'll be fine.
Okay, so you did what you needed to do. You know that you're having 2 littles, and does that then rule you out of the home birth regulated situation?
Oh yeah, immediately.
Right.
You get booted so quick. So I got the call from my midwife. Well, unfortunately, I have to transfer you.
Yeah.
Which was heartbreaking. It was awful. Like I have quite a bit of trauma from my first birth.
Yeah.
Yeah, like every time I go to, I'm a doula, so every time I go to a birth in the hospital, I still get dizzy, and it takes me a minute or 2 to just reground myself and be there to do my work.
My God,
yeah.
Returning to your place of trauma as a job, that's hardcore, man.
It is. It's hard, but it's a blessing to be able to be there so that it doesn't happen to everyone.
Have you, now let's go on a tangent real quick, but have you, in your doula work, seen, because obviously, unfortunately, the, forced into medication and then on your back vacuum and episiotomy is kind of par for the course for most births. Have you then seen that same thing happen on a woman you were supporting?
Oh, actually, I saw it happen with the same doctor.
Oof, wow.
It took me. And that was probably one of the only births where I've stepped over my doula line that I try to hold, where I don't speak for women. I will blatantly look at them and be like, well, Dr. So-and-so has scissors in her hand, and she is ready to cut an episiotomy.
Yeah, but you don't always get that time. Would they move fast with those scissors?
Oh, they are on it. They are on it. And that was the only time that I've ever stepped across that line and been like, whoa, whoa, whoa. She did not consent to that. She's told you numerous times she doesn't want that. She had the injection ready to numb her for an episiotomy. And it's like, no, absolutely not. She said no. She said no.
And then what happened?
And then she glared at me and she ignored me and talked to the mother and was like, well, your baby's not fitting properly.
Gross.
You're going to tear. You're going to tear and it will be worse. And I mean, the mama, I don't know how she remained so calm, but she just kind of shut it down. And I think that was also in its own way healing to be able to handle this doctor.
Wait, so she didn't get cut?
No, she didn't. And it was, I will chalk that up as like a personal.
Well, yeah. And I just want to kind of make the point between you and I here that, I heard you say, and I know that doulas are trained to follow exactly what you just said. If I don't speak for the mother, and I try to be, as diplomatic, and would you like this? Would you not? I see the scissors, all that kind of shit. But I love, and I really want to highlight that when you didn't do that, and you actually spoke up against someone who was about to abuse this woman you're walking with, you were able to engage her in such a way, and it worked out that time. Unfortunately, if you keep doing this game, you also do bursts where they just totally coerce them into it, and it's horrible, and it'll happen, and it's happened to plenty of bursts that I've been to, unfortunately. But I think this is so important because I know so many doulas listen to this podcast, and I'm just going to be very blunt. Fuck not speaking up for women. Like, if I saw a woman who was about to be raped at a bar, would I not speak up because the rapist is a doctor, or the owner of the bar? I don't know. I'm just making this up. Like, of course not. Like, we have to speak up. And there's a silencing that is happening in the doula community around witnessing abuse that is so disgustingly inappropriate. And so, yes, speak up. And I love that you did. And look what happened because of it. You saved a woman from, or you helped a woman, from being cut in the way that you were. And so, yeah, I just think it's so important to highlight these stories and to, remember that actually this woman's paying you to anticipate and advocate and speak the fuck up, not to silently watch someone be cut against their will, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things where now in the doula community, being certified is more important than
and building. How about the building bridges?
Oh yeah. And let's be friends.
Yeah,
like,
the day that I hear a doctor talk about building bridges, I will also start to talk about it. But as far as I know, it's only doulas and midwives talking about building bridges. I don't hear any doctors talking about it.
No, they don't love us because we're in the way.
So that's hardcore. So you are treated horribly in this first birth, and then you become a doula and go back to that hospital. Wow, that's like a whole nother side conversation. That's hardcore.
Yeah, it was interesting. And after the birth, where this mom did not get cut, the doula, or sorry, the doctor came up to me and she's like, "You look familiar." And I was like, "Yeah." Yes, I wonder why.
Did you tell her?
Yeah, I did. I was like, "You cut my vagina at my first birth." And then just mic drop and left it at that. It was just
what did she say?
Nothing. It was the most awkward moment ever, but inside I'm fist pumping myself. Like, yeah, take it. And yeah, it was awesome.
So you are pregnant with your twins. They cut you from their care because of a total variation of normal that nobody trusts. And so they now say, sorry, lady, but you have to go back to the place of abuse and trauma. And you're like freaking out.
Absolutely. And it's not even just going to the place. It's a mandatory operating room birth with a 4-person NICU team for each baby, on top of the doctor, the resident, a nurse for me, and a nurse for each baby.
Because in theory, they are going to support the attempt of a vaginal birth?
Oh, in theory.
Right.
Of the first baby. The second baby, it's like hopefully the second baby will be born vaginally. Wow. Chances are not good. Yeah, it's ridiculous. They classify fraternal twins in the same category as monochorionic, monoamniotic twins. Mm-hmm. There's no differentiation in their processes. So we got booted from the system, from the midwifery system immediately. And it was transferred over to an obstetrician. Everything. So I panicked.
Yeah, of course.
I know what's ahead of me, and I know what that will look like for my babies. And it's awful. There's no part of me that wants that birth for my babies.
Well, it's a C-section.
Absolutely. Guaranteed. And not even just a C-section. It's a labor on my back. It's probably a full labor.
Right.
And a vaginal birth. And then a C-section where I'm under general. My babies will be put in NICU because they're twins. They'll be put in NICU. They take them for everything. Mm-hmm. And it's just not the start that they need. There's no way. I not once doubted my body's ability to birth these babies, to carry them to full term. There was nothing. It was the birth and what other people were going to be doing while I was trying to birth them safely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, and so I was up till 3 a.m. every night, researching, talking to other people about how I could loop the system, if I could find a loophole and have my midwife there, if I could get a midwife who would attend the birth at the hospital even, but in a birthing unit, in an actual birthing room, not the OR. Mm-hmm. I was trying to figure out if I could do that, if I could fight to not have the NICU in the room staring at my vagina while these babies are being born. And none of these loopholes I was finding were being, proving worthwhile. And at a certain point, me and my husband were talking one day, and he looked at me and he's like, just stay home. Like, your body knows what to do. You know what to do. Just stay home. There's no need for all of this stress. And I don't know if it was just not hearing that I'm not crazy for wanting to have these babies at home, because inside, that's all I wanted was to stay home. But just hearing my husband say it,
that's huge.
Like, you're not insane for thinking that this is normal, and that twins are not something to be horribly feared. And I'm only probably 11 weeks pregnant at this point. So I barely had to digest the fact that we're having 2 babies. It was panic mode for me.
Sure.
Did you ever? Yeah. Yeah. So I eventually set my mind, immediately after that conversation, was like, no, we're staying home, and it will be an unassisted birth. It will be fine. Everything will be fine. And then I just set off throughout the pregnancy on that. I did spend a lot of time making administration of the obstetric department aware that there were failings twin mom.
Good.
Yeah. And I wrote so many emails and called them and was like, okay, so why can't I have a midwife there? And why can't I do all of this? With no plans on actually going to the hospital, but just planting those seeds of there's women who want more, who don't want this birth that you're like, there's no other option.
And so were you pretty out about your choice to free birth twins?
Yeah, everyone knew around me. I still went along with my OB and with my, for my husband and for me, mostly for my husband. I'm sorry, honey, if you're listening.
What?
I said, I'm sorry, honey, if you're listening.
Well, wait, so he's down with you free birthing twins, but he still wants you to see a doctor? I don't get it.
He wanted to know that we were in the best situation when it came to date, which I understand and I'm comfortable with. So that's just how it went. And so at my OB appointment, it was like, yeah, sure, let's talk birth because I want to know how you feel about this and what your plan is for this hypothetical birth that is going to happen. And it just, every appointment, it just reinforced more and more and more. There's no way you're getting me there. It's not happening.
So you would tell them, like, I'm not actually coming here in labor?
Yeah. It's like, I might stay home. I birth really quickly. Who knows? I might just, so I kind of left it open.
Mm-hmm.
There was a certain level where if you are entirely open about it, and just like 100%, no, I'm staying home. They could drop you. They could send CPS your way. They could just wreak havoc on your last couple months of pregnancy.
For sure. That's why I was kind of surprised that you were. Yeah.
No, I wasn't entirely outright, but everyone knew that it was a possibility. I had discussions with my OB about, okay, so say I stay home. How would I get my birth registration? Just possibly. So it wasn't really open. So I went to all of my appointments and we fought over things, which was fine. She started offering me inductions at 36 weeks, which was just obscene to me, and obviously didn't go further. And so around 37.
It is really, sorry to interrupt. It is really obscene because, I mean, obviously induction is so whack. And for twins, we already know that they are more susceptible to come on the earlier side, and then to induce them even earlier before their lungs are developed. I mean, it's all money too, right? Like, of course they're going to spend 3 months in the freaking NICU. Of course they're going to need all of this help. So we might as well just TikTok start the freaking process. It's just so disrespectful.
Oh, totally. It absolutely is. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but in our birthing hospital here, they just switched things so that there's an on-call obstetrician, and that's it. You can no longer have your own OB come in for a birth. So there's zero continuity of care.
It's literally the worst care available. It's
literally,
it's assembly line, right? Like it's factory farming.
It is. Like they won't even come in now when you go into labor.
Gross.
If they're on shift. Yeah, it's disgusting. So not going to happen. Definitely not going there. So once I hit 37 weeks, I was having a disgusting amount of prodromal labor. It was just the worst. I ended up having a good 12 hours of labor ahead of the time. And I was like those contractions were real. They were slow, so it felt weird, but they were manageable. So it's like, it's twins. Who knows? Maybe I will have a 48-hour labor. I don't know. So I had called my birthing team at this point, and my team consisted of my friends, two are doulas, and I had another friend who was going to be taking pictures for me. And so I called them, and they came, and we hung out. My husband made food, and we took walks around the block, and it was just not going down. And eventually it petered out as the sun came up, as it always does. And they stopped. And it was emotionally one of the hardest days ever. I was so tired at this point and so done being pregnant with these two babies that it was crushing to have those contractions stop. It was sad for me. I don't even know how much weight I gained at this point, but my belly was massive. I don't think I gained weight anywhere else other than my stomach. And it was like, it was huge. My husband had to help me roll over to get out of bed to go pee every hour in the middle of the night. And it was okay. I was still moving, and I was going for walks with the dog every day and doing all of these things that apparently you're never supposed to do with them. And so by the time labor had stopped at 37 weeks, I was just I was beaten down. So it was really sad. But the next week I spent a lot of good time with friends and with other women in the birthing community who they made that last week tolerable. It was amazing to see everyone come together and support me through that. And so I made it to 38 weeks, which was amazing. To bring those two babies to 38, I was so happy. I was planning on freebirthing them anytime from 35 weeks and on. We would have been okay in our comfort levels to stay home. And so to get to that point, was this huge weight off my shoulders.
Yeah, those are healthy little babies.
Oh, they were so healthy.
I think the longest home birth, the longest normal spontaneous twins birth I've attended, she was, I think, a day shy of 41.
That's amazing.
And they were like, she didn't even look that huge. And I think they were like both like around 7 pounds.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, mine were 7.5 and 7 pounds.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's what hers were too. I love it. Okay, so you get to 38. You're feeling like, okay, the babies are great. Yeah. It's happening.
Yeah. I was, by that point, my sad week had ended.
Nice. You got to go through it.
Oh, yeah. I was like, I'm 38. I'm going to make it to 40. Let's do it. This is great. I had a bloody show. I was like, nope, it's not going to happen. I'm going to be pregnant for the full 40 with these guys. So I went to a women's circle that I was a part of, and I spent the evening with my beautiful friends, talking and laughing. And one of my doulas, who's also a really dear friend, she drove me home, and then she drove the hour home. She lives an hour out of town. So she drove the hour home, and I went to bed at 1:45. I wake up to go pee, like I do every hour. As soon as I stand up, my water breaks, but with like the thud of baby A, her head smacking into my pelvis. It was the most insane feeling. And immediately I was like, oh, okay, it's going down now.
Nice.
Yeah. So I called my friend who had driven an hour away. She had just called into bed. I was like, you need to come back now. This is going to go quickly. I called to my husband and told him to get the pool and start filling it up because our little old water heater might need a little while. So I called my other doula. I text everyone, let them know what's going on. About half an hour later, the first contraction hit, and it is dropping me to the floor. I'm like, okay, this is how it's going to go. It's going to go fast. So I text everyone. I'm like, you guys, it's happening, and it's happening like real quick. And so I had all of these people who were going to be at our free birth, not as like hands-on, but as like, okay, you need to hold baby A if I'm going to drop her in the water. You need to hold baby B if I need to get out of the water. And just all of these like logistical things. I was like, there's too many babies and I don't have enough hands. Like, I need you guys just nearby to catch one if something happens. And so my women are coming and my candles are being lit and my music is put on and being just space held for me to do what I need to do. And everyone knows, just let me do what I need to do. You're there to catch a baby if I'm going to drop it. And so contractions are clipping along very quickly. I had been pretty confident that it was going to go quickly, but it took me off guard how quickly it would go.
So how long was it from beginning to end?
From first contraction to the second baby was an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, snap.
It was...
Girl, that is crazy.
Right?
Wow.
Like, I just don't even... I expected an hour in between baby A and baby B.
Right,
like,
totally.
But no one's pushing Syntocin. No one is rushing me. Baby B will take his time. No, it was like wham bam. It was insane.
Wow.
So I checked myself because I just make sure there's no cord, nothing funky going on after, like before baby A came. And just do a quick little check. She's right there. Okay. We need to get in the tub right now. So I hopped into my pool. Another contraction. I didn't know the steps at this point, but they say that the baby's soul joins anytime before birth, right? Or after birth, even. And I felt the moment that she connected. It was like an instant, she's coming. I know it's her, and I know that she's here, and she's made the decision to be born right now. And so in that moment, her neck, she did her little flexion, and she was born into my arms, and it was incredible. It was amazing.
Where are you, in your bedroom?
I'm in my pool in my dining room.
Oh, in the water. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the water at that point. So I go to bring her up and out of the water into my chest, and she has her cord wrapped around her neck, which is fine. I unwrap it. I cuddle her. Her transition is a little slower, which is fine. Like the moment of her birth is respected. There's no light. There's no suctioning. Nothing. None of that. Her eyes were fluttering open. I was holding her away from me, so we were making as much eye contact as a newborn can make. And it was just peaceful. She was taking her time, working her fluid out, and her transition took probably around a minute to a minute and a half for her to get ready to take that big breath. And And it was amazing. That was the moment that's why I was birthing at home without anyone there, was for her to do that.
Hell yeah.
It was so good. It was so good.
And then are you like, oh, right, there's another one.
Not until the contraction hit. I'm like, oh, I have to do it again.
Oh my God. Okay, so she's out, and then how many minutes until that contraction, you think?
It was about 20. It was about 20 minutes.
Oh, that's nice. You got a second.
I got a break, but it was, after birth, you feel complete, right? You have your baby. You can breathe again. There was no breathing, right? It's just the energy in the room. It was peaceful, but
right.
It was not.
The work was not done. Yeah. Wait, so if your whole birth was just over an hour and they were 20 minutes apart so your first, she was out the chute in 40 minutes-ish?
Yeah. Basically, she was 50 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super fast.
Thank God you were planning a home birth.
Well, seriously, I wouldn't have made it anyway.
Yeah, you would have had little parking lot babies.
Yeah, totally. It would have been awful.
Okay, so baby girl's out and you get 20 minutes. And are you still in the water when that contraction for the next baby starts?
Yeah. So we're just cuddling in the water, get a little towel wrapped around her. And it was peaceful and candlelit and beautiful. And then all of a sudden, the worst action I've ever had in my life on my poor
no
shrink around baby B, and it was the wildest feeling ever to feel it go from 2 baby size to 1 baby size, and then
I bet
shrink around his little body. And I felt him flip because he had been transverse this whole time. So I felt him flip, and just kind of hoped that he was, he'll figure it out. I know he'll figure it out, but I'm like, just make it.
So I want to pause there for a second because that's very important. I heard you say that the second baby was transverse and then he flipped. So because you were, I assume, getting ultrasounds and seeing the doctor and stuff, did you have any concern around the position? I mean, I love that you're saying this because it is so rare that a baby stays transverse. But some babies are transverse until labor, and that is true. And then sometimes, and then I should say most of the time they certainly flip into a birthable position because biology and nature. But so how did that feel for you to have that awareness heading into your birth at home with no medical assistance?
To be honest, it wasn't even crossing my mind.
Okay.
It was, I trusted him entirely. I got a lot of fear from the medical community about this position of baby B.
Yeah.
How it was a crash C-section if he didn't move, and how if we were to birth in the hospital, there would be an ultrasound immediately, and there would be 2 nurses holding my baby through my womb, and holding him in place, and they would be flipping him into the place that he needs to be according to them. And it was entirely, in my mind, it was ridiculous because he's transverse because there's no room in there.
Right.
And he'll figure it out. He'll have a whole room to play in.
Right. Exactly. It's such a good point.
Yeah. So it wasn't even really a concern to me. I was more concerned about, if he comes breached, then, I needed to remind myself to hop up onto my hands and to get upright if I was holding the baby. It was just, that was my only concern with that. I knew that even if he was transverse, he would figure it out, or we would figure it out together. It wasn't going to be wasn't going to be an issue with us. And so I didn't really.
Yeah, give him much energy.
Yeah, not really. There was more stuff that I was concerned about. I knew pretty much my whole pregnancy that bleeding would be an issue for me.
Why do you say that?
I just knew. There was just something in the back of my mind that, not to like manifest it, but it was more so like, okay, there's 2 babies. There's 2 placenta sites. I'm creating extra blood for this extra baby in my body. It's not going to feel great after. It was just something that I kind of felt would be in our journey together. And it didn't scare me. It was just kind of like, okay, there it is.
Was postpartum bleeding kind of your big, not even fear, just awareness, or like what else held your focus around any potential fears or concerns about it?
No, I think there was the concern with baby B that he would have a little bit of a harder time with the transition, with his newborn transition, because he was going to be birthed so quickly after the first baby that I anticipated him not getting as much juicy contractions as her to get her going. So that was the biggest thing in my mind. The bleeding, it didn't scare me. It was almost like not an expected happening, but more of I just keep circling back to intuition. It was such an important process with these twins, was my intuition and my relationship with that.
Sure.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily think it was a big fear of mine, and that I kind of steered it into existence. So it was just kind of there, and I needed to know how to handle it if it did happen, but it was never a scary, like, I would never birth these babies because we could bleed out. Missing that one.
Sorry, you cut out. Say that last line again.
I said it was never something that was kind of in the back of my mind. Like I would bleed out if I had these babies at home.
Gotcha.
It was never,
Okay, so baby B flips from transverse into a good birthing position. That was kind of where we left off.
Yeah, so baby B flipped. And in one swift contraction, he engaged and he twisted.
Oh my God.
It was insane to feel him flip around and do his little thing. And I'm still holding A at this point, and I'm kind of like reclined on my bum. So the contraction was just awful. It was just awful being reclined. I wanted to be on my hands and knees or upright. And I looked at my sister and was like, you need to get in. You need to get in and catch this baby, because I don't want to give baby A away. I don't want anyone else to hold her. Moving, I'm not going to be able to catch baby B. You're going to have to hop in the pool and just catch him. So my sister, in all of her amazingness, hopped in with her cute little romper on into the birth pool and basically just guided his head up to me so I could grab him out of the water. And he was born so quickly that he came out just pissed off.
That's good though.
Oh yeah, it was great. He was fine. He was raring to go. And yeah, so they were both out, and I had this like, holy shit, there's 2 babies. They just came out of my body. It was amazing. I have a picture of my face after, and it's what you imagine a kid coming off of a roller coaster at Disneyland. Just like, yes, we did it. This is like, they made it here. They're safe. They're in my arms. No one is taking them away. No one is. They're respected. They were trusted. We did it. It was that moment of like, I knew that we would be good, and we are good. Everything is great.
Beautiful.
And it was so good. It was so good. And then, yeah, we hung out and we cuddled. We ended up getting out of the water. I was bleeding quite a bit by this point. I mean, 2 placentas. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and how were you feeling?
I was feeling good. I was feeling okay at this point. It was quite a bit of blood in the pool. And I was like, well, okay. One of my doulas, that's like, let's just get you out so we can see it.
Yeah. And were your placentas out?
No, they weren't at this point. What I imagine happening is a lot of blood from A's placenta releasing before baby B came. That just came out after baby B came. So I wasn't too concerned. And once I got out of the pool and moved over to the living room, I did bleed quite a bit before the placentas were out. And I was feeling okay. But then after a while, I started to feel pretty shocky, which wasn't a super great feeling. But again, we all kind of expected it. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things we had discussed before, like getting out of the water and going to dry land, that alone can make you feel pretty crappy after you give birth.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. Having 2 babies, that alone is a shock to the system. I just let go of 15 pounds.
Wow.
My body's not going to, it's going to take a minute to
recalibrate.
adjust.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of, there was an immense amount of fluid. My blood volume was way bigger than what it would be with just a single baby. And so it is what it is. Once the placentas came out, the bleeding didn't necessarily stop. I was passing quite a few big clots. And by this point, I had passed out once. And so when I woke up, it was like, let's just make a call. My uterus at this point it's firming up and the bleeding is slowing. But let's just make the call to have EMTs there if we need. So the EMTs got there, and everything was.
Did you kind of in the back of your head, like, kind of always think you'd probably do that?
I don't think I really anticipated calling. I kind of anticipated the shocky feeling, just with 2 babies. Mm-hmm. That whole thing, I kind of just anticipated feeling not super great. But the calling kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. And I think that fear didn't necessarily help slow the bleeding as much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, once they got there, the bleeding had stopped. And they were, obviously, everyone showed up. The fire truck showed up.
Oh, yeah. It's very dramatic.
Oh, my God. 2 babies were just born at home. 15 people piled into my living room. And I'm just like, oh, yeah, it's fine. It's all good. I feel better.
And so then what happened?
Well, and then they just came. They took my blood pressure, and we were kind of chatting. And I was like, yeah, okay. I think I passed out another time while they were there. Again, fine. And at that point, everything had kind of stabilized. My bleeding had stopped. And I consented to a saline with them there. We weren't going to transfer right away. We were okay. There was nothing going on. But the saline was like, yeah, sure. Let's just pump that back up a little bit. So we did that. And then I was feeling good. I was feeling fine. But I also knew that at some point in the next week, I would have to go get my hemoglobin checked.
Say that again?
So I knew that within the first week I would want to go get my hemoglobin checked.
Oh, hemoglobin, yeah.
Yeah. I lost quite a bit of blood at that point. So I was like, well, okay. Should I transfer? Should I just go tomorrow? And we ultimately decided to transfer to go.
Right after the babies were born?
No, it was like an hour and a half after they were born. We ended up, like, my bleeding had stopped, and they're like, we're fine leaving you here. And I was like, well, that's great. We could have stayed home. I had a little bit of a tear, not a little bit. It was a 2nd degree on my perineum where my episiotomy split open again, which is just lovely. And just knowing that I had 2 bigger kids at home and twins, I knew that I wasn't necessarily going to be able to sit with some nori strips and let that heal as it should. So I was kind of wanting to get it looked at or stitched up within the next day. So we ended up transferring to the hospital about an hour and a half after the babies were born, which was a ginormous waste of time.
Which was what?
A ginormous waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, which it's okay. I don't necessarily regret it. I got my blood checked and found out that my hemoglobin was incredibly low, which obviously it would
But
be.
like, okay, so I say this totally lovingly, but like, didn't you already anticipate that? And so therefore, like, what are they going to do about it? Like, if you already anticipated that, you could still do all of the blood building, healthy, normal things you were probably going to do anyway. Like, why was it important to you to get it checked? And I'm only pointing this out because it sounds like you already knew.
Yeah, I did. I totally did. I was actually taking chlorophyll and eating an insane amount of kale and leafy greens and red meat before I even gave birth. I'm not entirely sure. I want to say it's just for that part of me that really likes to know, I guess. I just wanted to have it in my mind. I'm not entirely.
Yeah, it's okay. I love your story because, well, for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons I love your story is that you only really free birthed because you had to, because our culture doesn't support it. And so that's so badass that you were like, I know what's going to happen at the hospital and my children deserve better. And so I'm doing this. And yet at the same time, you also weren't like how, some women in the free birth community are like hardcore out of the system. They don't go to pediatricians. They don't go to obstetricians. They don't get ultrasounds. They don't vaccinate. Like, they're completely not a part of the system. And I love this story because it is so variable and there are so many ways to this path. And I like that your story for your choices and your intuition and what you needed, and your compromises and whatever, even if it's different things than I would have chosen or someone else, that your way was you did prenatal care in the system and you birthed in power this sacred experience at home. And even though there was obviously still some allegiance to whatever it was that you felt like the hospital was going to offer you, even though you still in the same breath can say it was a waste of time, but it was okay. Like, that was what you wanted to do for your calculations. And, do you know what I mean? I think it's just, it's cool to point this out because it's not like everyone has to be so hardcore, totally outside of the system, never engage in any way. There's also this.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. I just need.
No, yeah, totally.
Not one free birth. There's so many different ways and so many different paths that lead you to that choice. And
that you would have preferred a midwife, the whole setup you could have had, you were going to do again. And because the system's so jacked, we're put in this fairly impossible situation of return to your abusers or birth and power at home like you knew your babies deserved. And you did that. Even though that wasn't like your first choice, that, your first choice would have been, it sounds like, to have had that midwife, but that you did get pushed into making a pretty hardcore decision. It's obviously everyone knows that it's not like a simple thing to choose kind of an even more radical decision. I mean, although for me, things like breech and twins would make me even more committed to birthing at home because you and I know how they're treated at the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pathologized.
Yeah.
And there's no need for normal birth to be treated like that.
So did so you went in because you wanted to be sutured and you wanted your blood tested and you got the IV fluids. Did babies stay with you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I wouldn't touch them. They, for me, it was just to get me checked.
Mm-hmm.
So could then go home and deal with my 4 kids.
So they were not admitted?
No, they were not. I was holding them, and the nurse didn't like the way my daughter, baby A, sounded. She was pretty rattly. And she's like, I would really like to just listen to her lungs. I'm like, dude, she's fine. You don't know what normal babies' lungs
right.
sound like because you just shove a tube down them and suck anything else. It sounds not pleasant to you. Yeah, so I got many ugly stares and many discussions about how they needed to check the baby. I'm like, they're fine. You're only here. I'm your patient. They're not. I'm only here to get my blood checked. No, you're not admitting me to maternity. Just please throw a stitch in it, and I'm going to go home now. And so 2 hours later, we packed up and we went home.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fine. And I don't feel like I regret the decision to go in. I know full well there was absolutely no need to go in.
But it's different when it's your choice and you pulled off, I don't know if you ever heard my birth story, but I went in to get checked after a long labor and then I left. And, it was, it's different when it's our choice and when we're using the system as it's meant to be used. But I also so appreciate that in the same breath, you can say, while I don't regret it, I also didn't need it, because it's the same for me. I certainly don't regret getting checked at freaking 9.5 centimeters, but I also did not need to do that. And so I love that we can both kind of acknowledge both things.
Yeah. And that's just it. Using the system when you need to use it as it's meant to be used. And it's fine. There's no need to feel shame or beat yourself up about going in. But it's nice to also be like, it was a waste of time. I could have absolutely stayed home.
We're both so lucky that it did get, it unfolded in a way that remained respectful to both of us, because that's not always the case, right? Like terrible things could have happened by bringing 2 little newies, into the hospital and it could have not gone that way. So it's
absolutely.
And so I got to ask, like, if you were to do it again, would you have stayed home?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. No, I wouldn't have wasted my time.
Yeah.
Going in, as soon as I went in, I had this awful obstetrician who gave me the tight vagina talk.
Ew, what?
Oh, I know. I know. So we were discussing the degree of the tear that was going down and how many stitches she needed to put in. And I was like, no, you just repair it. Like, just, I only want it stitched up where it split along my scar tissue. That's all I want. I went in knowing what the situation looked like down there and what I wanted done. And she did not like that. And she was like, well, I can just put one at the top because if we don't repair it further, your husband's going to notice.
Oh my God, that's the most disgusting shit ever.
Oh, I kicked her out of that room so fast. It's like, lady, you are in the wrong room to be pulling that shit. And so I kicked her out. And yeah, it was one of those moments where like, holy fuck, they just don't change ever. They told us
for sure not. The
only
only thing that changes is that we believe in the system. That's what changes.
I am using.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that you were only there for a couple hours. It didn't have to stay the night or anything.
Oh no. We we didn't even get settled into a room or anything. We just basically, it was just for me to take a breath almost after I got my stitches within the first like 45 minutes of being there. And it was like, well, my mom is on her way with a booster juice, with a smoothie. Mm-hmm. I would really like her to bring that here and I want to drink it. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to drink it and then I'm going to go home because it'll take me longer to get that smoothie if she has to go meet me at home. So I basically just stayed there for extra time to eat.
Awesome. And how old are your twins now?
Oh, they're 15 months.
Aw.
15 months now, and they're just so busy.
And how were they as babies? Were they like pretty contented?
Yeah, honestly, they were the easiest things ever. We bed share with all of our kids, and it was just kind of, they just fit right in. They slept, they breastfed great, they are just happy, peaceful little things, and it was honestly my favorite newborn period. It's probably the hardest, I want to say, but also my favorite. I mean, there's something special about having your third and fourth. I know for me at least, just feeling really confident.
Yeah.
I'm totally fine to just chill in my bed naked for 3 weeks.
Well, and you just totally birth on your terms and are probably feeling like such a badass and so proud of yourself, which, that's important. That is how you should feel after you birth. Not to say you didn't feel that with the second baby, but, to not have any piece of it taken from you or just the whole thing happening on your terms, how could that not lend itself to a great postpartum?
It absolutely, it did. Like I felt in charge of everything. I felt no need to be handing over power to anyone else in that whole postpartum. It was, no one is coming to meet them. We're staying in bed. We're nursing. I've got this. And it was the best postpartum. It was entirely from trusting that. And I know that that birth was perfect for them the way that it was supposed to be. They were healthy and they were beautiful and they took to breastfeeding so well. And it was just one of those moments, because having twins, 95% of the information that is out there or the stories that are being shared are so heartbreaking to read. C-sections and NICUs, and it's just, as a twin mom, you're just wanting to find comfort in the normalcy of it, and it was just a nice
Totally. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing your part to normalize what is normal, which are twins and twin births and breastfeeding twins and vaginal birth. And just this story will go a long way. Thank you for taking the time tonight to share it.
No, thanks for having me.
That's it for today, everyone. Join us next week for another episode of the Free Birth Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your body, your choice. Lots of love.